All right. Here goes nothing. Here is lecture 2. I guess it's lecture 2 part 1. Yeah, we're going to call it lecture 2 part 1. And the title of the lecture tonight is The Method of the New Vision, or the methods of the new vision. So we're going to kind of create a groundwork, and I think there's going to be a lot of these, and I'm excited to present them because it's really, really rich, fun territory. So to begin with, I'm going to read a quote from a letter that Jack Kerouac wrote to Allen Ginsberg, dated September 6, 1945. I was telling Mimi West last summer how I was searching for a new method in order to release what I had in me. And Lucian said from across the room, "What about the new vision?" The fact was, I had the vision. I think everyone has. What we lack is the method. All Lucian himself needed was a method. Fascinating. This is a fascinating one. Because here, this shows the presence of the new vision, the fact that it was very much on the minds of these three. And to the point that when Lucian was arraigned in court, they interviewed, Jack and Burroughs were arrested, and they questioned Allen. And they were so excited about the new vision that Allen actually saw it as an opportunity to talk to the press about the new vision. Now, I don't think any of that made it into print. That might be a fun thing to look up and see. Anyhow, but this also implies that Jack was thinking of it in terms of a method to get the art or the somehow his essence out into the world. And so that's fascinating. Now, most people to this point, in fact, according to everything that I've read about the new vision, it's clear that it was a thing. It's clear that it was important to them. What isn't clear is the exact contours of the new vision. And most have assumed that it was a method for getting art out on display. In other words, a description, some type of product that the world could then buy, be influenced by, and so forth. One of the first clues to that there might be a different take on it is this quote from Allen, which was from the year before. This predated the last quote by several months. That one was September 6, 1945. This was November 17th, 1944. And this is what Allen said. This is from his Finally Have the Book. I was looking at it across the room because I'd always forget the title. The Book of Martyrdom and Artifice. First Journals and Poems, 1937 and 1952. Allen Ginsberg. Here's the quote. The most individual, uninfluenced, unrepressed, uninhibited expression of self is the true expression and the true art. This quote incorporates the living art that my argument is that we can become. That Lucian was, that Neal Cassady was. And I'm going to add to that a fantastic anomaly, Gregory Corso. Gregory Corso was an embodiment and fulfillment of the new vision, setting his poetry aside. What's beautiful about Gregory is he embodied it and he was still able to produce a record that could be called art on the page. In his case, poetry. That's a lecture for another time. I want to go do a deep dive with Gregory as a fantastic record of a fulfillment of the new vision. Okay. So what is the method? What I'm presenting tonight is that there's one method which, among many, but I'm starting with this one, which is a method of self-analysis that allows us to take steps towards becoming the art. Although, of course, it can be used as a means to sharpen our production of descriptive art, of art that is separate from ourselves, whether on the printed page, whether on the stage, whether on the canvas, whatever the case may be. But my particular contribution is, again, to be the art. So going back to the three pillars, we have evading conventional morality, we have naked expression, we have derangement of the senses. I'm saying that it's in finding the connection. Oh, sorry. I got a poor connection. Why would the connection change? I don't know. I'm not moving. Anyway, I hope this doesn't keep happening. Anyway, to back up a little bit, the three pillars are evading conventional morality, naked expression, and derangement of the senses. We can self-analyze by looking at the first two and using the third, derangement of the senses, as a way, if we aren't able to understand how to bring the first two into balance, we can derange the senses. In other words, grab something from the unknown that can remove the conflict between the first two. So just to give you an idea what I'm talking about. When evading conventional morality is out of balance, we're so pissed off at what Lucian called the MBC, aka the modern bourgeois culture, that we become paralyzed. We don't see how we can contribute. We don't see how we can produce anything original, and we hate the system that creates bad art. We hate the bankruptness of the commerce of art and the other things that capitalism and all kinds of corruption and problems of government, problems of society. We feel overwhelmed, and it causes us to hide our light. So a question to assess ourselves on that is, how pissed am I at the problems of modern culture? And is that being pissed off stopping me from expressing nakedly? Is it causing me to just freeze up and give up? However, when it's in balance with naked expression, we begin to flow in our expression. But the key is to keep the failings of the modern bourgeois culture in mind and recognize that the things that we bring forward in our naked expression may be a kind of medicine for the modern bourgeois culture. Moving on to naked expression. When that's out of balance, we choose quantity over quality. We're not realistically evaluating and recognizing and keeping in mind the failings of society. And so we might be too people-pleasing. We want to put something out. We can build a fabulous career, fabulous reputation, pleasing the public by not asking hard questions, by not challenging the society and culture. But that's a problem of being out of balance. When we're in balance with naked expression, we are willing to put our unique stamp on the world. Whether that creation is, again, a product, something that is a reflection, that is one level removed from ourselves and our own presence, or if it is that presence itself. So we're willing to be vulnerable because we recognize that through the intercession of the unknown, new things can come through us as we embrace that flow. And we're owning our unique individuality. We've never been seen before, and we're never going to be seen again. And so that can impel us to embrace that reality and be a little bit more impulsive about bringing our gift, whatever that is, discerning that gift, bringing that gift in the form, chief among them, our presence in the world, our contribution to the world. Because of that, though, we have to embrace the fact that we are a bit of a mystery, and we're going to come across as being foreign to society. And that means that we'll get all different kinds of reactions. Again, if evading conventional morality is in balance, we'll recognize that, and we'll understand people don't need to get me. Does that make sense? People don't need to get me. You roll with that reality that you're going to hear every kind of criticism, every kind of condemnation, every kind of praise. Praise that's out of balance too. It's like too much. So we got to be comfortable with the unfamiliar, and that we can be the conduit for the unfamiliar. And that is a high expression to actually do that. There's this term occult, and I think I brought this up before in the context of William S. Burroughs, who was very much, he enjoyed the occult, and he liked to go down those occult rabbit holes. Growing up in a Christian family, I thought of the idea or the word itself, occult, as being something ghostly, forbidden, spooky, demonic. Those are true in a sense and to a point, but only to a point. Really, occult just means hidden. And when something's hidden and it sort of pops out, there's an element of surprise that causes us, that sort of tracks towards our default mindset of such things. So if it's fearful, if you're trained to think it might have something to do with this devil figure, that's the impact that it will have, because it's surprising. So you go back into this very kind of primal state. But if you've tuned up that primal state to be more inquisitive, more open to difference, then you can recognize that, well, what is this thing? First of all, you can start to ask questions. Does this thing, just simply because it appears a certain way, does it actually mean that it's bad, wrong, or dangerous in some way? And very often, if not all the time, the answer is really no. Because also it's a fresh energy. We are a fresh energy. When a baby is born, it brings that fresh energy. People can feel it. And if we don't get sort of hammered down by the society and the culture, and we have principles like the New Vision to play with, bringing that new and original and fresh light that we are into the world, then wonderful things can happen. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So our presence itself, in a way, is a kind of occult experience, because it has never been seen. Now, as we ask ourselves these questions about and trying to bring evading conventional morality and naked expression into balance, one thing that can enhance this process is the derangement of the senses. And I went into some of the methods in the previous 2 lectures. I think I want to say part 2 in particular. So I'm going to bring out this silly illustration, because the yin and the yang, as classic and kind of overused maybe as it is very illustrative of this. So this is my PowerPoint. Are you ready? High tech. So this is a woefully adequate picture of the yin and yang. So if we can use this as a representation of balancing derangement of the senses and naked expression, you can see them sort of twirling around, doing what the little yin and yang thing does. I don't know, I've never seen one animated, But I want to call attention to the substrate. What are these critters swimming in? Well, the substrate is this. It's the line that encircles it, and to me, in the context of the new vision, this represents derangement of the senses. In other words, it's the embrace of the unknown that allows the two to dance together, because the human mind will want to gravitate towards one thing or the other, evading conventionality or evading conventional morality, same idea, on the one hand, and naked expression on the other, and try to sort of glom on and hold on to it. As we do this process of self-questioning, however, we can gain insight through our minds, but in order to enhance that process and perhaps bring things into balance faster, we can sort of jettison the rational linear mind a little bit and to let something else through the spirit of play, through the spirit of some of those things that I mentioned. And I think I'll do a lecture maybe on each one, or at least one that sheds a little bit more light on each of those possibilities, some coming from the world and teachings of Carlos Castaneda, or the teachings of Don Juan through his student Carlos Castaneda. Now, very interestingly, we can also get out of balance with derangement of the senses. And I use the example of a subculture. For example, subcultures that are devoted to partying, psychedelics, overuse of psychedelics, things like that. Because when we get into a subculture, what we're actually doing is we're creating a new moral convention. So in other words, we're getting into situations where there's a new moral code of conduct that you're not really allowed to deviate from. And there's just, for example, if you're deranging the senses and you don't have a canvas, or you don't have an understanding of the importance of bringing the unknown through for application to improve society, to bring that medicine through for something beyond a several-hour trip, binge, concert, festival, if you just sober up and go back to work, well, it's all for nothing. We're not becoming the thing. We're not producing any medicine for the greater society that doesn't have a gate-kept bubble. That's the problem of a subculture. It's exactly the same as a cult or a religion. There's a gatekeeper. You're free to do certain things within the capsule, within that bubble, and then we clean up and go to work. We're weekend warriors, which the powers that be are fine with that, because we're not really doing anything to transform society, either publicly, privately, on a small scale, or a large scale. All we're doing is indulging in this sort of derangement. We're having the fun. We're wrecking the body, etc., etc. So I always like to point that out. All three of these things can be knocked out of balance. And when you knock them out of balance, you're distorting all three. So this whole idea that I'm pointing out is for the sake of, again, becoming the art, but restoring the flow and the acceptance of who we are as a unique person, as a unique presence in this world. And when we do this, we can impact society in wonderful ways through what we create, but also, and most importantly, through our presence. Lucian Carr did not become a writer. Neal Cassady did not become a writer. To some degrees, and mostly I think Neal tried to do that, but he couldn't. And I think part of that is because his presence was so huge in the world that to write meant for him to get out of the moment, which was a painful process. I think it's to some degree painful for everyone. Jack self-medicated through that whole process of his writing, and in various different ways. Now, some of it may have been helpful. Some of it may have been a legitimate use and a balanced use of deranging the senses through experimentation. Alan definitely did that. But at a certain point, he crossed the line. He knocked things out of balance, and the quality of his writing suffered in his later years. So anyway, points to ponder, food for thought for what it's worth. I wanted to add this. This is fun. When we're out of balance with evading conventional morality, there's a great, and I'm going to name her this time. I'm not going to screw up and forget, but Rickie Lee Jones has a great song called Jukebox Fury on her album, The Magazine. And right at the beginning of the song, there's this lyric that I've pondered for years. It's very very short little lyric, but she basically says she's talking about a childhood memory. Polly and I went to the circus, and then she says, "We got even with the circus. We bought tickets, but we didn't go in." And I think out of protest, because society is truly fucked up, but out of protest, we deny society our light, our contribution. And so, but at the end of the day, we're only harming ourselves. The circus doesn't care if you go in. The circus already has your money. You may as well bring your presence and through naked expression, get in that flow and bring who you are. Make the contribution. Don't indulge in the self-punishment of buying the ticket and not going in, because that's all it is. We're not hurting society by holding back our light. We're hurting ourselves at the end of the day. That's all I got tonight. Thank you.